Hi, Kara.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm ready whenever you are.
Yep, I'm all good to go on Zoom. I think Ashley's the eScribe today.
Okay.
And I'm ready on eScribe too.
All right, let's get going then. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the Public Works Committee to order. We continue to meet via Zoom webinar due to the pandemic. And if you are joining us via Zoom webinar and would like to provide comments, you can use the raise and lower hand feature to raise your hand, and I will call on you to provide public comments. If you're participating by phone, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. If you want to provide comment on a specific item agenda, you can call the entire City Council by calling 406-552-6012, and you can always email citycouncil@council@ci.missoula.mt.us. And with that, our first item is to see who is here. So I will do a quick roll call. Stacy Anderson, I believe, is absent. Becerra is present. John Contos.
Here.
Great. Heather Harp.
Present.
Great. And Jordan Hess might be late, or yeah, he's joining a little bit later. Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Merritt. Don't think she's here. Jesse Ramos.
Here.
Great. And Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Brian Van Lossberg.
Here.
And Heidi West.
Here.
Great. So we have minutes to approve from 11/4/2020. Are there any amendments to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will stand approved. And I will take public comment on any item not on the agenda. And I don't think I see anyone from the public joining us. So we will move right along to our first item of business, and that is a referral professional services agreement amendment number 1 for a transportation engineering consulting services. And Kevin Slovarp is here to present.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, wonderful. So we entered into a contract about 6 months ago with WGM Group for transportation engineering consulting services. And that contract had a provision to extend it for an additional 6 months upon mutual agreement in writing. And the amendment number 1 is that mutual agreement in writing. So that's what we're bringing forward today. The services that WGM has provided thus far has met the city's expectations and proved to be instrumental in the projects that have dealt with transportation engineering. We just don't feel like we would like to hire a full-time employee that in this capacity that works for the city. But we just don't feel at this time that it's ripe to go out for a position announcement, and so we want to continue this contract with WGM as they've done really well, and we still have a need for these services. So I ask that you approve the mayor to sign this professional services agreement amendment number 1, and that's what I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kevin. And this is for $50,000, right? Not to exceed $50,000?
Yes, the original contract was for the same not to exceed dollar amount, and so the total would be $100,000.
And this is coming from out of the engineering professional services fund, which we anticipated and it's budgeted for, correct?
I think originally this was supposed to be funded out of road district, but through the budgeting process, that wasn't included in the road district budget. So there's some professional services money in the engineering budget that can pay for this. So that's what we're putting forward today.
Great. Thank you. Anyone has any questions or would like to make the motion? Amber.
Thanks. I'm sorry if I missed this. This is just a year-long contract, correct?
It started out as a 6-month contract, and we were hoping at the end of 6 months that we'd be in a situation to hire a full-time employee, but we don't think that's ripe at this time with COVID occurring and other factors. We had essentially two failed recruitments originally for the full-time employee. So we're looking for more favorable conditions to advertise for that full-time employee. So this is just essentially a stopgap for another 6 months.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm happy to make the motion.
Great, thank you. Next I see Heather.
I was just going to make the recommended motion for the stopgap measure.
Great, thanks. I will be in support of this. I think it's important that even though we don't have a full-time position, that we continue to provide the services that are being demanded of us as we continue to grow. So this is something that we need to have in place. So I'll be supporting it. Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
I abstain.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
that's 9 yeses and 1 abstain.
Great, thanks, Ashley. So this will be in our consent agenda. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, our next item is a professional services agreement with WGM Group for the West Broadway water main replacement project, and Andrew Schultz is here to present.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me. I'm Andy Schultz, utility engineer with Public Works. We've presented a number of water main projects to you guys so far this this fall, but we had another one pop up basically along West Broadway in front of Taco John's. We had a water main leak, and the water crew did a great job repairing the leak, but they found that the pipe was in pretty deteriorating condition. So we thought that it was important to move up on our priority list to get it replaced kind of as soon as we can, especially with the development going on in the area. I might try sharing my screen and just kind of show you where we're at. Let's see if this works. All right, can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Perfect. So what we're looking at, we had a leak kind of over down here by where it says West Broadway. The pipe is in pretty poor condition. So what we'd look to do is basically start the project over on May Street at the hydrant and replace this hydrant, run along Broadway, and then part way down front till we can get to this old valve here and replace that valve. We're looking to enter into the agreement with WGM. They were chosen in the RFQ process as one of 3 engineering firms for water main projects. And we chose them in particular because they have their hands in, this is the future St. Pat's medical office building. So they're doing the site work for that. They're also doing the site work for the Riverfront Triangle. And we did WGM did a water main project for us last year, which included McCormick Street just north of us. And so they've already done the survey for most of this, and they kind of have the general idea of what future improvements are going to happen out here. So when we design this water main, we can design it so that we have the connections in place and the valving that we need in order to accommodate future St. Pat's MOB and the Riverfront Triangle. And like always, this is funded. We're looking at the agreement with WGM is $54,473, and that will be paid out of the enterprise fund. So no impact to the general fund. Yeah, that's all I got.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Are there any questions from council members? Brian?
Thanks. I was curious, Andy, how did we become aware of the leak there? How did that manifest itself?
There's actually some settlement in the pavement along West Broadway. And when they took a look at it, that settlement looked like it was right where the water main is. So that kind of indicates that the wire's been leaking and the soils have been kind of settling there. And so sure enough, when they dug it up, they found a number of leaks in that section of pipe.
Great. Quick follow-up. Do you happen to know the age of that pipe? Is it Invasion or Calamine or?
So yeah, that's very astute. We if you look here on the exhibit, it says 6-inch CI, which stands for cast iron. So we always, according to our records, we thought it was cast iron. And generally the records are pretty accurate, but when they dug this up, it was steel pipe. And that's definitely much more subjected to the corrosion issues. And so I guess we're not entirely sure when it was installed, but since the material is different, but it's definitely deteriorating to the point where it needs to get bumped up on the priority list.
Thanks.
Yep.
Next, I see Amber.
I was just going to say I'd be happy to make the recommended motion.
Great. And John.
Brian got my question answered. Thanks.
Okay. So I don't see anyone else, and we do have a motion on the floor and no public in attendance right now for comments. So if Ashley, we can move with a roll call vote, please.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
I abstain.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
okay, that's 10 yeses and 1 abstain.
Great. Thank you. So that too will go on our consent agenda, and thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Next, we have a referral professional services agreement with Era Lambros, and Dennis Boatman will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Dennis Bowman, Deputy Public Works Director of the Utilities. I want to start off, first of all, is thanking Andy. Great job on his presentation just now. And just for clarification, that main, there was 14 holes in that main in a 20-foot section. Basically, as you see, there was a lot of water, but it just settled the asphalt just a little bit. So he did a great job, and I appreciate you guys looking into it and approving it so we can move forward to reduce our system leakage. I'm here today to give you a background on it. Is the city owns a number of bare land properties in and around Missoula that were originally intended for use, but the city has determined, sorry, my screen went blank. But the city has determined that they are no longer needed for the public purpose. ERA Lambros will be providing various marketing and sales services for Public Works Department regarding several properties as described in Section 3 of the Professional Services Agreement. 4 of those properties are Missoula water properties that we've looked at. We don't need them anymore. We did an RFQ for this and put it out and selected a couple from Lambros to help us out with this. Those 4 parcels are part of the utility, and the financial implications will be the Water Enterprise Fund will pay the cash commission equals 5% based upon the sales price of each property. And then whatever proceeds we get from the sale of each properties will go right back into the enterprise fund to assist us with any future purchases that we need for growth, efficiency of operation of the utility.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I see Heather first and then Jesse.
Thanks. Dennis, I was wondering if you could tell us how many other firms bid on the particular contract.
There was only 2. We put it out, and at first when we did the RFQ, we weren't getting much comment. So we're worried that we weren't gonna get anybody at all because of, as we've all seen this summer, the realtors are extremely busy. So we received 2 is all but by the deadline. We did end up receiving more after it closed. It was about a week after it closed. We did get some more, but with honestly and respect to the people that made the deadline, we decided to select those 2.
Excellent. All right. And with that, I would be happy to make the recommended motion.
Great, thank you. Jesse.
Heather actually asked my question, so we're good to go.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we still don't have any public to provide comment. So with that, we will take a roll call vote on this.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
okay, that's 11 yeses.
Great, thank you. And that will also be on our consent agenda. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
And next on our agenda is a Mullen Bill Grant Project Information Update, and Jeremy Keene will be presenting.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jeremy Keene, Public Works Director. Wanted to give you an update on the Mullen Build project. We've been making a lot of progress, and want to give you an update on some of the design decisions and also where we're headed next. So hopefully you can see my screen now.
We can, thanks.
Okay. Figuring out how this works. 1 second. There, okay. So this is an interesting project. We've been working on a master plan, which is coming to the finish line now. And we'll actually have a public hearing on Monday. And at the same time, we're implementing key infrastructure that's part of that master plan. And so the Mullen Build project is funded by the federal build grant, $13 million, also some city and county funding, and ultimately will be funded through other developer funding through the form of impact fees, some latecomers fees, and some direct contributions to the project. The master plan really informed the build grant design by providing some key inputs. In addition to public involvement, it really helped us define what the future land use would look like. We prepared some growth and density projections and a travel or a transportation demand model. So, all of that information was really valuable in terms of determining what our traffic volumes would be and how many jobs would be in the area, how many residential units. So all of that plugs into the traffic analysis that we did. We looked at 6 different roadway corridors, 21 different intersections, different intersection types, different lane configurations, how we would accommodate bike and ped facilities, and also working with MDT because both Broadway and Mullen Road are MDT routes. And so we worked with them to get review and approval of the designs for all of those intersections and improvements that have been made on those routes. So real dynamic process. A lot of good work went into that. Oh, my slides aren't keeping up, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, so working with MDT, we've gotten approval for the intersections with Mullen and Broadway. What we tried to do here was look at what the long-term build out for this whole area would be and what those future traffic volumes would be in the year 2050. So that as we're designing things today and building things, we're planning for the long-term future. So the build grant will build some of this, and then there will be other projects down the line that have to happen to completely build out the area. And a good example is Mullen Road. We're not addressing the need to widen Mullen Road in the future, but that could be necessary, and our traffic analysis showed that. So the intersections that we're designing along Mullen Road will have that in mind, that Mullen Road may be widened someday, and those intersections need to be planned for that. So the project looked at the basic network that was included in the build grant, and then we had to set some priorities. If you remember, since we didn't have all the funding, we needed to prioritize what we were going to build first. And we prioritized that around the goals that were in the original grant application. And those were improving safety, alleviating traffic congestion in those corridors, really encouraging multimodal transportation, and finally looking at economic development, and particularly opening up land for housing development. So we had our consultant do a 30% design for all of these elements. So we got to a preliminary design level to help us understand our costs and the scope of the project. So all of that has been designed. It gives us a good jump start on some of the pieces of the project that won't get built right away, but puts us in a better position to move those forward when funding is available. And then our consultant proceeded with final design for what we're calling the phase 1 elements. And those are the pieces that are shown with the blue dots on this map. So these are the pieces that we can build now, and then the pieces that are in the orange color will get constructed at a later date as funding is available. So that includes the 2 sections of Mary Jane Boulevard that aren't connected yet. On the north, connecting up to Broadway with a new intersection at Broadway, and at the south, connecting down to Mullen Road with a new controlled intersection there. And then over on George Elmer Drive, it's a new intersection at Mullen Road and George Elmer, completing George Elmer Drive at the section that's existing but doesn't have all the curb and sidewalk, and then extending that up to the north until it connects with that future England Boulevard, which is number 5, and that'll get constructed back to connect to the existing portion of England Boulevard at Flynn Lane. So some of the key design considerations that we've been working on, the road typical sections, our intersection designs, stormwater design, which is a big deal in that area because we have some challenging soils and groundwater conditions. And then finally, how we're interfacing with future development. And all of this is really incorporating the goals of the master plan as we go. With the road typical sections, we took the conceptual sections from the master plan and we plugged those directly into the build grant design. So we're implementing those initial ideas, doing the engineering around them, and figuring out how to get that on the ground. So you can see on the right over here, this is the section from the master plan for neighborhood collector street. It includes protected bikeways, some nice intersection treatments, defined on-street parking and lane widths, things like that. And then on the left here, this is reflected in our plan section. This is the engineering drawing for how that actually gets accomplished on the ground. We developed 2 main sections for the build grant. There's what we're calling a neighborhood collector section, which is more of a residential section. It has a wide landscaped boulevard and a separated bikeway and sidewalk that are removed from the road. Then there's a second section that's more of an urban collector design. This is a little bit more geared towards commercial development, where you'd expect the buildings to be closer to the street, and it has wider sidewalks and treats the bike lanes a little bit differently so that you have fewer conflicts with pedestrians in those areas where you'd expect to have more pedestrian traffic around a commercial building. So with the intersection designs, we considered both signals and roundabouts. We did operational and safety analysis for these. And in most cases, the roundabouts came up as our preferred alternative. They are more expensive to build, but in the long run, they have a lot of benefits in terms of safety and operational efficiency. So, roundabouts work really well with a variety of traffic volumes, and they can handle both the peak hour traffic well, and they also work really efficiently in the off-peak hours. And of course, there's a lot of safety benefits with roundabouts that we think are really important to consider when we look at cost. You have to also consider the cost of safety, and when people are involved in crashes, injuries, fatalities, those are costs that we don't necessarily get to save on the project, but it's an important consideration when we do transportation design and think about those kind of societal costs. So this is the intersection of George Elmer and Mullen. So it's a roundabout. It's primarily a single lane roundabout, but you can see how it has some additional capacity for turning movements. So on the south edge of the roundabout, it actually has an extra lane to provide the capacity on Mullen Road to make sure that that works well. And then we're doing some access consolidation along the south edge to consolidate all of these driveways, build a little frontage road, and that'll connect up to some driveways that access Mullen Road. So that'll improve safety. It'll help with their ability to get on and off Mullen Road, and makes that intersection work a lot better. This is the intersection of Mary Jane and Mullen. It's a similar roundabout design, single lane roundabout with some added capacity for turning. We have a private approach coming in at the south edge, and then the new Mary Jane Boulevard coming in on the north. So if you remember recently, we talked about the Mary Jane and Broadway intersection. This is one that we are getting in partnership with MDT. We're getting some additional funding to help build that intersection. Because of the timing on the funding and the amount of funding that was available, our preferred alternative was a roundabout, but we were recommending a signal in the interim because of that funding constraint. So the roundabout on Broadway was a very expensive design. It's a big roundabout, requires a lot of reconstruction on Broadway. It was pushing $2 million to do that. And so we're recommending a signal, which is significantly less cost, will still work well in the interim. And we're planning that, in the future, we could still build that roundabout when it becomes affordable. So this is the design for the roundabout. Oops. So the roundabout could go in the future. This is the new VA clinic that's being built. We've worked with them to make sure that we dedicate right-of-way for that roundabout in the future. We've worked with this other property to the east to also make sure that we're setting aside that right-of-way so we could build that roundabout in the future. But in the interim, we're looking at a signal at that intersection. We've also taken a hard look at stormwater. We're both looking at how we handle the surface water and also how groundwater works. And one of our consultants is working on a groundwater model for the entire area that'll be really helpful in terms of understanding how we can use sumps versus when we need to have piped storm drainage due to the soil conditions and the groundwater levels at different times of the year. So that's going to be a really useful model going forward, both for our public works projects and also for development. Part of the master plan was to look at some innovative ways to handle stormwater. Green infrastructure and bioswales are something that we've been looking at recently and trying to understand how they work in terms of providing some treatment for the water and also providing some infiltration and changing the time of concentration that water has when it actually hits the storm drain system. So we think there's some good opportunities here to do these bioswales where you'd use a little bit of the street area to create an infiltration area before it comes to a sump or a storm drain inlet, which will help with our total capacity of the storm system. So some interesting things happening there. And like I said, a lot of coordination with private development. There's at least 5 or 6 major projects happening right now out there. Some of them are under construction, like the Summit Beverage and VA Clinic project. Others are beginning construction, like Hellgate Village. And then quite a few are in the process of going through subdivision or in their design process. So we've been talking to them on a regular basis to make sure that we're lining up our project with what they're doing, particularly in terms of where we have intersections, alleys, where utilities are going to run, how we stub out utilities to connect, how we treat the sidewalks, making sure that we've got the right typical section for the kind of development that they're proposing. So the costs on the project are, it's a big project. We're right around $40 million total for the whole thing. And that's certainly a challenge for us, trying to keep those costs constrained within the budgets that we have. This is our funding scenario. Right now we have about $16.3 million in hand with that build grant and our local funding. We also have cash available through the utilities to construct the utilities. And what we'd be looking to do there is set up some latecomers agreements or latecomers fees so that as development happens, we would recoup the cost of constructing those utilities, which are normally the responsibility of the developers. And in a similar way, we've talked about a special impact fee district for the transportation improvements. And that's similar to what we do with our citywide transportation impact fee. It would be assessed to all new development that happens within a specific area in the Mullen Road area that benefits from these improvements that we're making with the build project. So we're going to be bringing this to council in the coming weeks. Tentatively for January, we would bring our recommendations for both the special impact fee district and for a sewer and water latecomers fee. And we'll go through all the details on that. But essentially what we're able to do here is the city's providing the infrastructure ahead of development so that infrastructure is more predictable and better planned and in place when the development happens. Then we're looking to recoup those costs from the developers as they develop their projects, so that it's the costs are paid by the users and by the cost causers. So I think it's a good model. We're talking with all the developers to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of what we're proposing and making sure that we don't have surprises in terms of the way this works. But a little bit different approach than what we've done before with infrastructure projects. So the other thing that we're running into with our costs is, with the limited budget that we have right now is the costs for the portions that we're planning to build now, the blue dots, those are running higher than our available funding, our $19 million of available funding. So we're looking at a strategy of deferring some of the scope of these projects. And the basic goal is that we make sure we get the connectivity with the roads and bike lanes that we're proposing. So the idea would be to build a basic road section to connect all of these areas. And then as development occurs, we would come back and finish the curb, sidewalk, storm drainage, landscaping, some of those elements that we may not have all the funding for right now. And so what we would do is we would focus on complete improvements where development is currently happening, and we would defer some of the scope in the areas where development is a little bit further off. A good example of that is England Boulevard. We don't have any current development proposals on England Boulevard, so it makes sense to defer some of those improvements until that development is a little bit more eminent. And that also helps with maintenance. If you don't have anybody living there along the road, there's nobody to take care of the sidewalks, there's nobody to take care of the landscaping. And so I think it makes sense to defer some of those improvements until development actually happens. So that approach is similar to what we did with George Elmer Drive, south of 44 Ranch. If you remember, if you've been out there, that road was built without curb and sidewalk. And as development fills into the south of 44 Ranch, that curb and sidewalk will get built. And that's what we're proposing to do through the Build Grant project. So here's our timeline. This is a fast moving project. We've gone through a lot of the important steps to get all of the preliminary design done, understanding where our costs are, and have things ready to go to construction in spring of 21. So we're kind of right in that point now of getting our final design finished, getting all of the right-of-way agreements done. And finally, the big step is getting the grant agreement done with Federal Highways. And that's something that we've been working on and hope to have that in place sometime in the spring and be ready to start construction. This initial phase will be a 2-year construction season, so we'll get a lot done in 21 and it'll get finished in 22. So we've been having a number of public outreach meetings. We've had a regular virtual public meeting. It occurs every other Friday morning. And these have been surprisingly well attended. We've had good turnout for most of them, and they're also being recorded and put on our website so that if people can't make the meeting, they can go back and watch it. And we'll have a couple more here in December, one in January. And those are all, like I said, available on the mullenbuild.com website. And then there's also a forum for submitting project comments and feedback on the website that folks can use. And that's a good point to get feedback to make sure that we're covering all the details that we need to know about as we start to roll into construction. So that's my update. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Jeremy. That was really helpful. I think it's always interesting to see the progress of, big projects like this one, from the initial application of the bill grant to knowing that we got awarded some of the, the funds and now see it at this stage. So I appreciate that. I had a couple of questions for you. One is that you mentioned the Mary Jane Broadway intersection. I know that with that, there's going to be addressing the Flynn Lane. Also, is that happening at the same time? And I think that if I remember correctly, is to allow only a right-hand turn only off of Flynn onto Broadway. Will that happen concurrently or, about the same time, just to address the safety issues that I know are happening in that area?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. So one of the reasons we were able to get money from MDT for this was that they did a safety study at Broadway and Flynn Lane, which is this location right there, if you can see my cursor. So Broadway and Flynn Lane has a safety problem that MDT is interested in addressing. And so by adding a new signalized intersection at Mary Jane and Broadway, we can restrict some of the movements at Flynn Lane, make that a safer intersection, hopefully direct most of the traffic to the Broadway and Mary Jane intersection.
Great. And will something like that also be done on Flynn and Mullen after the George Elmer Mullen Road roundabout gets developed? I'm just wondering how that incoming traffic from Flynn onto Mullen will play into the efficiency and the safety aspect of the roundabout further west.
Yeah, if I understood your question, Flynn Lane at Mullen, we really want to direct the traffic away from Flynn Lane and Mullen and over to the new intersection at Mary Jane and Mullen.
Okay.
And but we've talked about some restrictions on Flynn Lane. I'm not a huge fan of restricting movements unless you have a real problem, geometrically or identified safety issue. I think having grid road network is really important, but we want to treat Flynn Lane more like a local road. So by providing the intersection control over at Mary Jane, it should draw most of the traffic that's trying to turn left, which is that's the tough movement there. Yeah. So we'll have to look at that more as we get this project installed and can watch what traffic is doing. But hopefully that traffic will naturally migrate over. If it doesn't, and we're still seeing problems with that left turn on Flynn Lane, we may need to restrict that left turn.
Yeah, I think working with the school might be a huge key to making that a little bit safer and work better. Thanks, Jeremy. I see Julie Merritt and then Heidi West.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's good to get this update. I'm excited to see the options like the bioswales being considered. I know WGM has installed a few of those over in Bozeman, and I got to see some video of how they actually operate, and they look like they are going to be a good stormwater treatment there. So I'm excited to see that. I wonder, I know that you show us here on the project priority that the Grant Creek Trail and stream restoration is kind of way down there on the priority list. But I wonder if you could speak just briefly a little bit more about what we hope to see come out of that stream restoration.
Well, the stream restoration, it's a complicated deal because there's a lot of other regulatory agencies involved, but has a lot of benefits in terms of restoring a more natural stream section in the floodplain, and creates a nice amenity. We can have a trail go along that. It also has the benefit of removing the floodplain designation from a large amount of land up in that area that could then be developed. So there's a benefit to the landowner by doing that. So it's a real win-win. We get a better, more functional stream, and we get more land that can be developed. So it's still part of that $40 million cost that I showed you. So we are still planning to do that work. It's just a matter of getting the funding in place to do it.
Okay, Heidi.
Thanks. I had a question about the deferred, I guess, infrastructure pieces, the sidewalks and landscaping. And so in those scenarios, will those components be then the responsibility of the developer? Or how does that relationship work in the future?
We're still planning that the curb and sidewalk and storm drainage work would still be part of the build project. So it would still be funded through this build project. We are talking about the landscaping, street trees, basic landscaping to be a developer responsibility because it's so specific to the development and often their own choices. So that would probably be theirs, but we would still fund the curb and sidewalk work, and that's just a matter of when the money's available.
Okay, Heather.
Thanks. Jeremy, I was wondering if you could speak to the other $10 million that you hope to fund with, I'm assuming federal build dollars, and what that process kind of looks like. What can we anticipate?
Yeah, we applied for another $10 million build grant in the 2020 cycle. We did not get that. I don't know what the future opportunities are going to look like. We'll obviously keep looking out for other grant opportunities to apply for, but right now we don't have that. So, so in our funding scenario, we're looking at making up that difference with this special impact fee district. So that additional $10 million of federal is not in this table right now, and unless we have that opportunity and can secure some other grant money, that's not part of the formula right now.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? I don't see anyone from the public in attendance. So with that, if no one has any questions, thank you, Jeremy, for the update. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was our last item of business. So unless anyone has anything else, we would be adjourned. Okay, thank you.